It is 5:30. I call the meeting to order. Mr. Mayor, can you do a roll call attendance vote? Attendance, please.
Sure. Glenn, you're gonna have to, I muted you, so you're gonna have to unmute, sorry. Councilmember Henry? Present. Councilmember Mock?
Present.
Councilmember Sayer?
Present.
Councilmember McKnight?
Present.
Mayor Johnson?
Present. Thank you, Brent. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning into tonight's work session. Work sessions are conducted to provide City Council with introductory information opportunities, to provide staff guidance, and to facilitate initial conversations on a topic. No votes are taken. As such, there is not an opportunity provided for members of the community to provide comments or to ask questions during a work session. Those interested in providing comments to the City Council on any city-related topic are encouraged to participate in the community comment during the regular meeting via Zoom that begins at 7 o'clock. Information related to joining the Zoom conferencing services can be found on the city's website or attached to the agenda for tonight's meeting. This meeting is also available live on the city's website by clicking the video link under upcoming meetings on the homepage at cityofcarver.com. All right. First on the agenda is a new employee welcome. Jacob, welcome. Did Chad tell you that we like to play two truths and a lie here at the City of Carver?
He did. He let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chad, I don't know, do you want to do the introductions or?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
So this is our newest public services tech. His name is Jacob Moran. He was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He's grew up in, yeah, I figured you would enjoy that.
I appreciate that.
He grew up in the St. Michael, Albertville area, went to college at St. Scholastica in Duluth. Just from the get-go, a lot of technical experience, plumbing, irrigation, construction. Once we got to know him, extremely nice, well-spoken, very easygoing, hardworking, learns fast, and one of the favorite things that he told us during his interview process is we always ask a hypothetical sports question. You know, what sport would you play and what position? And he said point guard, because that position, you do what you have to help the team, and that'll always stick with me. So his nickname around the shop is Big Jake, and this is Jacob Moran.
Jacob, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I think you don't know me that well, but everybody on council can easily anticipate this question. Being born in Green Bay, who are you cheering for on Sunday?
Yep. Oh, Packers, 110%.
Oh, I like this guy. All right.
Fired. Fired.
Did Chad just do a spit take?
Yeah, Packers all the way. So.
All right. Jacob, just real quickly, we like to get to know you a little bit better. We'd love to do a quick round of two truths and a lie. Are you prepared for that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my three statements are, I just got married, I'm left-handed, and I'm 23 years old. So one of those is a lie.
Okay, show of hands, folks. Which one is the lie? Everybody can play along.
I'll just go with 2.
All right, Jacob, it looks like it's between 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's number 2. I'm not actually left-handed. I'm right-handed, but
All right.
oh, not a great one, but yeah.
All right, well, welcome to the City of Carver. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
And go Packers.
Yeah, go Pack.
All right.
They can go.
All right, with that, let's move on to the HPC Commission interview. So tonight we have David Pasco joining us. Council, if you are okay, we'll do this just like we did the last one, and I'll ask the questions just to make things a little bit easier. Okay, awesome. Let's see. So welcome, David. We have half a dozen questions that I will ask, and then we will discuss this, I believe, a little bit later on this evening during the regular council meeting, just to give you an idea of procedure. And then Brent would be reaching out to you within the next few days to let you know how things turned out. So question number 1 is briefly introduce yourself.
Name's Dave Pasco. I'm a licensed attorney, make my living as a financial planner. I have a little bit of experience on council, commissions. I was the president of my neighborhood board when I lived in Minneapolis, and I was a park and recreation commissioner in the city of Crystal. I'm a Navy reservist, just got back from a 13-month deployment to Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. It's a small African country just north of Somalia.
All right. Why would you like to be a member of the Heritage Preservation Commission?
I have like I said, I've got some other places that I've been involved in. It's kind of my natural, go-to is to get involved in the communities that I'm in. I'm fairly new to Carver, and I noticed that there was the opening. There was a spot that was not filled, and I was a history major in undergrad. I have a lot of respect for where places come from, and I think that preserving that is pretty important. So that is specifically why this would be a good fit for me, I think.
All right. What do you feel is the role of the HPC?
Well, I think that probably the first thing is to make sure that people understand that it exists, that there are some rules and some guidelines to help keep the architecture and the buildings and the community unique and interesting. Giving not only letting people know that those rules exist, but giving people ways to do right by their buildings and their community. Public awareness and getting the word out there, I think, is pretty important, not just the guidelines themselves.
In terms of historic preservation, what do you think is positive about the actions of the city? What do you think is positive about the actions the city has taken, and what do you think could be improved upon?
Well, I mean, the guidelines themselves, like both the commercial and the residential guidelines, are pretty good, and they're expansive. But if you go to the right chapter or the right section, you can find something pretty specific to what your building might be. It's not like the 78-page commercial guidelines are going to look like every single page is going to apply to every single thing that's happening on each building. I think that that's really, really helpful, and having that guide or those guides available is pretty important to let people, to give people examples, especially of what good historic preservation would be.
All right. What personal strengths will you bring to the HPC?
Well, I enjoy, maybe enjoy is a strong word, but I respect that there are certain ways about doing things, especially with historic preservation, renovation, things like that. I do have a couple of rental properties, not in the county, but I'm familiar with the permitting process. And obviously when you're doing historic preservation, there's an extra layer on that. And for people that just kind of want to slam through a job and get it done, the permitting process and dealing with a commission like this could be frustrating, but kind of being proactive and letting people know that this is part of the process and outlining those rules would be, I think, a strength that I would bring to it.
All right, the last question is that the HPC meets on the second Tuesday of each month. Will you be able to consistently attend those meetings?
Yes, calendar is clear.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't. If there's any other follow-ups, I'm happy to answer them offline. It's an interesting job. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in historic preservation. I have an interest in it, but I'm hoping to help in any way that I can.
Well, great. Thank you so much for your interest. We appreciate you applying. Council, does anyone else have any other questions they want to ask? Seeing head shaking, no. Okay. All right, David, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. You're welcome to stay or leave. Totally up to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to item number 4, the Jonathan Carver Parkway Improvement Project Landscape Update. Aaron, Ms. Smith, go ahead.
Okay. How's that look?
Good.
Cool. All right, so tonight we are discussing the Jonathan Carver Parkway landscape project. We have a couple of goals of our conversation that I will say to you now. I'll talk about them throughout our conversation, and then we'll wrap it at the end at the same goals just to make sure that we're checking all the boxes that we're looking for. So tonight the goals are, we're looking for review by the council of removal of some trees that were previously shown on the plan that we looked at the April 6th meeting. We are looking for affirmation of the committee's roundabout, or as Glenn would say, rotary. And we're looking for a general consensus of the council's support on the landscape design for the Jonathan Carver Parkway project. So if you remember the 2019 strategic plan, we were really intentional about this project. It kind of felt like what?
That your slides aren't moving forward.
Oh. Nothing?
No.
Looks like you're locked in the edit. There.
How about now?
No.
Looks like you're in a protected view if you
Yeah, I have
hit
those
that.
too.
Aaron, I don't want you to feel like you're in the hot seat. Do you want us to move ahead in the agenda, or are you okay?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you though.
Well, Aaron's working on that. I can update the council related to joint powers agreement for the project. Dan Lannis and I met with Lyndon Robjent and Darren Milkey this morning. And Dan, you can feel free to add on, but I think that the negotiation worked out really well for both, but especially for I would say, main areas that we were looking to accomplish. One, the county is willing to fund 50-50 the RBFF, so the pedestrian crossing system south of the roundabout at 6th and Jonathan Carver Parkway. The county is also willing to pay for 50% of the cost to relocate the Carver Black Sox sign that was being impacted by the trail realignment. And then the county is also willing to pay 50-50 for a trail section which runs north from Ironwood Drive to where the new to the new underpass. Previously, they were saying that needed to be 100% city, but that trail is already constructed. It is only really being impacted due to the construction of the pedestrian underpass, and so ended up being a really, I think, good negotiation for the city, and the county has been a really good partner to date on this project. I don't know if I'm missing anything, Dan, but a really significant piece. We'll still have to kind of cross some T's and dot some I's as it relates to getting it through Larry Harris and the county attorney's office. But I think the majority of the document is in really good form to bring to the council for adoption, probably in October. Dan, anything that I missed?
No, other than the fact that this would be quite a success if it got done in one meeting, and it looks like it might be done in one meeting. So I think it was a good faith effort by all involved. And I think it went very well from what I've experienced. So
I hope you didn't just jinx us, Dan.
no, I think it was good. I think it was good. So yeah, we'll see. It'll explode from here just because I. There you go. We'll see what happens, but good meeting.
Great, good news.
That's the PDF.
Slide 3 or slide slide one here, looks good.
My transitions will just be a little choppy, but we're gonna go for it. So if you'll recall at our 2019 strategic planning get together, we were really intentional about this project. It felt a little bit like kind of the flagship project for this council coming together as the 2019 strategic plan kicked off. We knew that we needed to hear different voices from our community. We knew that we are not the only people who use the corridor. It's people who live on the corridor, work on the corridor, have different experience, and just use it differently. So we were really intentional about starting this project from a place of where can we go, who do we need at the table, what will the project look like long term. So as part of that, we created this dream list of who we wanted to be involved in the project. So we solicited information from people that had a diverse background and relationship to the city. So we had a business owner on the corridor, 2 residents that lived on the corridor. So their backyard, looking out their windows in the back, is Jonathan Carver Parkway. We were looking for residents that had children at Carver Elementary, just knowing that they might look at the corridor a little bit differently, thinking about how their children maneuver the area of Carver Elementary, as well as getting there. A resident that lived in the community for more than 10 years, so someone who has definitely seen a lot of development in Carver, probably felt a lot of the growing pains that have come over the past 10 years, but especially the past couple of years with the amount of construction that we've had. We were looking for a new resident, so someone who had moved in recently, who might not know as much about Carver, but they were excited about the project. Master gardener was really important to us, just because we don't have some of the specific knowledge that we felt we needed in the group. And then a representative from each of the commissions. So Planning Commission, HPC, and Parks Commission were all part of this project. So what we asked them to do is we asked them to work towards a vision for the corridor, but something that we stressed at the meetings was that we also needed them to be champions of the project, just because this project is going to be long, it's going to be challenging at times, and it's always easier to have someone in the conversation throughout town that can speak about a project to say, hey, I know it's hard, but I worked closely on that project. I'm really proud of it. It means a lot to me. Just to give some different perspective for people who might not be so excited about a very long construction project through a majority of our city. So here's the group together. We met several times over the winter of 2019 and 2020. It feels like it was a long time ago, but all of a sudden here we are. So here's the group together looking at huge layouts that we did. Dan and then Jonathan Nelson with Bolton and Mink did a really fantastic job picking up on just the conversation that the group was having. So it was often side conversations that 2 people were having that Jonathan would pick up something small that he was able to add to the plan. So this group was definitely heard during the process, and they were also really kind and fun to work with. So some of the things that they developed for the vision for the corridor is that they were looking for something that was uniquely Carver. So I think that we all can agree that there's a pretty good sense of place when you're downtown Carver, but we're still developing that through other parts of town. So when you're in downtown Carver, you see the flower baskets and the clock and some of the monumentation that we have. And we're working towards it, but I feel like we're just starting to incorporate some of those things up the hill, as we say. So how can we draw things from downtown that are important to us to what is considered the newer part of Carver with more construction? Something else we wanted people to know that they were in Carver when they started driving down the corridor. Jonathan Carver Parkway is very much the gateway to our city right now, so how can we make it seem like, oh, this feels a little bit different, like I'm suddenly not in Victoria, but I'm also not in just Carver County, now I'm in the city of Carver. So we were looking for something that complemented the existing branding and identity, so again, what we have downtown, and then more recent work that we've done together on Levi Griffin and Monroe Drive. So if you think about Levi Griffin and Monroe, when Monroe is fully constructed, you'll see a lot of similarities between those 2 roads, and that was very much not by accident. We were really thoughtful about the planning of Monroe. Levi Griffin was a great place to start for us. It has the river meandering the way through the medians. We mirrored that on Monroe Drive to give it more of a parkway feel, to again give it that distinct feeling that, yes, I am in Carver. We were also looking to balance function, safety, and aesthetics to create that unique corridor. So I could have made it as pretty as possible, but if Dan was telling me it wasn't safe, it didn't work. So we worked really hard to find a balance between what we liked as a group, but also what would function and be safe for the community. So here are some of the items that we drew inspiration from. So again, the flower baskets downtown, the light poles, the clock, some of the branding that we have, just the type of branding and also some, like what it says. So we have a couple of these elements incorporated in the project that I'll get to as I continue. And then again, we looked at existing corridors that we have. So we asked the group, what do you like about streets in Carver right now? So something that they mentioned was the tree canopy on Broadway. So if you think about JCP and its relationship to Broadway, there are two streets that definitely feed off one another, and they will have a relationship that it's important, I think, that they look and feel similar. Again, just to give some of that continuity, knowing that you're in Carver. And then this is a picture of Levi Griffin Road that shows the river running through it. So we know that the free rocks aren't an option for the JCP project, but something we would ask you to consider including in the project in a way that works for both us and the county. So here is their grand vision. The committee said that they had a preference for more natural features, so they preferred things that looked a little more natural, less manicured. They thought it was important to have the Minnesota River continue. They were looking for that sense of place, and then again, that branding, so including the light poles that are similar, and then something that's exciting that I'm really looking forward to is adding that medallion over Highway 212. So as you're traveling 212, you'll see different communities with their logo and their city's name, and that's something that we focused on for this project. Again, something that says you are in Carver, you are here, we are in a different spot now. So here's the group proudly showing off their rotary or roundabout. Again, this was a really great group to work with. If anyone from that meeting is watching tonight or watching later, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of the process. Can anyone hear my son crying?
He doesn't sound happy.
Okay, it's not just me.
No, it's very soft.
Okay, good. So at the April 6th City Council meeting, again, we heard that we needed increased spacing of the trees throughout the corridor. It was important for the project to blend with current wayfinding and branding. And then we had a couple editorial changes for the committee that we want to talk through tonight. So there's been a change that we removed some of the columns in the center median that traveled the entire project distance. Something that we asked the committee to do was not think about cost, which was fun for them in a lot of ways, but then challenging for us, having to reconcile some of that to say, you had this great idea, but all of a sudden we can't have it, and the number of columns definitely has been revised. And then there was a preference for overstory trees as opposed to the evergreen screens. So, as part of that conversation, we're going to start in the area along Jonathan Carver Parkway, near the intersections of 6th Street and 4th Street. So through the conversation on the 6th, we talked a lot about tree location, tree placement, and it worked really well on paper. But then as we dove into it a little bit more, we realized it doesn't work in practice. So you'll see the picture on the screen. There are fences throughout the Jonathan Carver Parkway corridor, and there's not an opportunity to add trees in several of those yards in those locations. So we took 14 trees out total. I know that there are some yards that you'll see here that don't have a fence, but we didn't want to limit the property owners that live there now to say, we put this beautiful tree in, you cannot have a fence in the future. So that was something that we felt was important, was to allow the property owners there to have a little bit more control over what's happening to their property. So we don't want to be in the business of changing someone's property too much if we don't have to. So the removal of the 14 trees reflects that. We also identified that a lot of this project is just going to have to be field fit. So something might look great on paper, but the day that the trees go in, we might go out there and realize it doesn't work. We need to move that tree. It needs to be in a different spot. So we increased the spacing guidelines, and then again, removal of 14 trees in this area. So here is an existing view as well as future. So you'll see additional trees added to the west side of the corridor, the east side largely staying the same. So something that we'll ask as part of the discussion tonight as we're thinking through trees and tree placement is that landscape decisions are often a one-time decision. So it's not common at all that we go back and add additional trees to a project. So remember that as we have this discussion. Something else is that the decisions we make here about this project tonight will set the vision for JCP for decades. This is going to be a project that hopefully does not need major repair for a very long time. And I hope that it's a project that we all can look back on and say, we worked really hard, we made some really good decisions. Something else, the work that was completed by the committee were a group of invested residents. So keep what they have in the back of your mind, that it came from a group of residents that have different perspectives and travel the corridor differently. And something else to consider is that where the corridor stops today is not where it's going to stop in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So the additional space that we can take south, I think, is important right now, just because someday the corridor is going to continue much past where the fire station is and where 6th Street is. So here's a view if we are at the intersection coming off the bridge of 212. So thinking about some of that branding, you'll see the poles that are included, the light poles that are largely being added throughout the city where we can. The committee was really excited about a trail system that connects, adding more connectivity. Right now you get up to the bridge and you're kind of stuck. So how can we increase how people can get both into Carver but also north? So yes, there's not a ton of development by Fleet Farm and Lakeview today, but it is anticipated in the future. So how can we set ourselves up for success with our trail system today to create that development north? I think this is one of the more beautiful parts of the project are these columns. So again, increasing the branding. So the water tower is our logo. It's everywhere. It's on all of our apparel, all of our city documents. So adding that, we had a couple different options for these columns, but felt it was important to keep just the water tower, just Carver's name for branding. And they are, I think, going to be really stunning when they're lit up at night, which is great. For a review of the April 6th meeting again, we heard increased spacing through the trees throughout the corridor. So we're going to work really hard to figure out where trees make sense. And if they don't make sense somewhere, we're going to work to not put them there, just because we don't want at any point to be removing trees that we have worked so hard to get on the project. We understand there's an importance for blending of current wayfinding and branding. We feel like that has carried through the project at this point. And then we're talking through the editorial changes again, the removal of the columns in the center median and overstory trees instead of evergreen. Another discussion point that we'd like to talk through tonight is the roundabout. So you've seen a couple of versions of the roundabout with some different orientations of the center. So this flips it. We heard some feedback from the council that pedestrians might end up there if it looked too much like a pedestrian walkway. So this roundabout shows the area in the center with concrete. So this has a couple benefits to it. So first, public services will have a place to put a truck to do maintenance in this area. So to get to the center median safely would be tricky for them with any equipment, especially if there's nowhere to put a truck. So thinking about watering, getting equipment out there, this is a good option to give them some space to work with and to work efficiently. This also gives them a little bit less work in the center median, so less plantings with some increased concrete. This also carries through the vision of the committee. So adding that river kind of flowing through the median is something that they felt was important for branding and to create a consistent look throughout the city of Carver. So here's the other option of the center median. So increased plantings, no bench of concrete in the center. But it's something we would like to get a little bit of feedback on from the council. So you'll remember the goals of the conversation were to review the trees previously shown in plans, affirm the committee's roundabout recommendation, which does include the concrete area in the center, and then get a general confirmation and affirmation of the council's support on the landscape design. I will open it up for questions and discussion.
All right. Let's see, I will start. I think it looks good. I think it's, Aaron, I appreciate you being reactive to what was just not feasible, like the trees in the backyard of the folks between Community Park and 4th Street who have fences in their backyard, and your rationale for making those changes certainly makes sense. Aaron said it, but I want to be really careful that when we're talking, speaking as a council, that we really keep in mind, you know, we sought out volunteers to provide counsel and to share their feedback and to essentially do the heavy lifting on this for us. So I think that they came up with a really nice plan, and I'm in favor in moving ahead with it as proposed. Go ahead, Lori.
Aaron, are you looking for direction then on the roundabout?
We're looking for a general affirmation that yes, we'd like to move forward with the roundabout as the committee proposed with the concrete in the center.
Okay, can you go back to those two slides?
Want me to start here?
Sure, that's great. Did we reorient where that is? Well, for some reason I had in my head that we'll call it the river running through it, was going from 6th Street to Dahlgren.
Yes, so it's been flipped a couple times back, and so it started this way, it got flipped, it's flipped back. So we feel like this is a clearer way to keep pedestrians out of that. I don't foresee that being a huge issue, but I think this kind of solidifies it that it's a space of just viewing, not walking.
So I do prefer the sightlines of for aesthetically when it's placed this way as compared to the other way. I still do have a little bit of concern that we're going to have teenagers, possibly from the skate park or wherever, that are going to be looking at that and thinking it's a trail. Can you flip to the next one with all the plantings in it instead?
Sure.
So I know that here you kind of put in one swath of things. It could certainly not be one big green area. It could be plantings that are changed up throughout, so it doesn't just look like a big, big sections of one. I really can get on board either way. To me, if the rest of the council thinks that the river through it is the preferred way, do like it oriented better this way than the other direction. So I just wanted to say that if we go forward with having the river, I would prefer it the way it's presented here.
I can make a comment on the river. So I've noticed the river on Levi Griffith, and as well as what's shown here is in the median, right? So it's going down the center of Jonathan Carver Parkway. So I agree with you, Christy. I like the orientation of the river because it kind of continues it, even though it's jumping to a roundabout and then beyond. I'm assuming, I can't see it in this picture, but does the river continue south of 6th Street in the median?
But it would continue throughout the median.
Okay, so then I like that continuity. I guess that makes sense to me.
Lori, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, Aaron, I had a question on when you talked about Medallion on the bridge. And I know, I'm not sure if it's going to be the east or west, but I know just right now one side of the bridge has that taller green fence. Probably the west side where, yeah. Okay. So I've seen in some other communities where they'll have the Medallion just on one side where that tall fence is, and they'll have, sometimes it'll be on both sides. Do you know if we're at a point, what the preference is, or would we only see it on one side? Would we have it on both?
So right now the project only considers having the existing fence, which is on the west side of Jonathan Carver Parkway, or yeah, over 212. We'll be adding it to that fence. If in the future an additional fence is added to the east side, we could also add it there. But at this point, we're just considering the one.
Okay. I would support having it on both sides, knowing that then we're probably adding a fence just for the decorative part and to be able to hold the Medallion. But I think just for the design of it, and, you know, for the branding and identity, to have it from both coming the east and the west. But I also don't know how that impacts the cost too. So that would be my only thing, like on a wish list. Otherwise, I think from a landscaping perspective, this looks great.
Thank you, Lori. Glenn?
I like it. I like the way it's laid out in the on the north-south corridor there with the river running through it. I think taking out those 14 trees is a bonus. I just like it. Looks great. I'm happy.
All right. Erin, do you have, sounds like it's unanimous approval. Do you have what you need from us? Is there any further direction?
So I'm just going to reiterate that we're going to move forward with the roundabout with the concrete in the center, oriented more north-south instead of east-west. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 5, the 2021 General Fund Budget Review. Mr. Merrick.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
I'm gonna kind of skim through some of these slides that we went through the other time so that the council has an opportunity to spend some time on what I'd call kind of the meat and potatoes of some policy and policy making as it relates to tax impact for residents. So what we had discussed not only at our last budget work session but previous is kind of the difference between the general fund and the enterprise funds. The general fund being funded through property taxes, while the enterprise fund, which is water, sanitary, sewer, and storm, being funded through rates and charges for the use. So one is a property tax, one is more of a use tax. Where we're at in our process is a fairly significant step right now. Is at your next meeting on September 21st, the council would be setting the budget for the budget or the preliminary tax levy. And so if we need to schedule an additional work session for you to kind of go over some details, we can certainly do that. Typically, we'll present the levy as a recommendation based on your feedback during these work sessions, but we'll also provide some options should you wish to adjust that. And then we'll be hitting the enterprise fund budgets in October, going over a draft of the truth in taxation presentation at your November meeting, having that public hearing in December. I had typically truth in taxation statements, so that's the taxes that residents can expect based on the preliminary levy that you set. Those will typically come toward the end of October, the first part of November, and that'll really give the council an opportunity to get some feedback from residents, business owners, property owners, etc., culminating with the adoption of the budget levy at your last meeting of the year. Some revenue items that we went through at the previous meeting. The one thing I'll note, and you'll see it in an additional slide, is we just kind of highlighted the feedback that we received from the council that we want to do as best that we can to try to line up the purchase of the plow truck while also monitoring how local government aid may or may not be impacted. And perhaps a good question for Representative Nash at the regular meeting is what he anticipates for impacts to LGA in the upcoming legislative session. I'm gonna skip through these. If anybody wants me to stop at any of the kind of the expenditure items, I'm gonna skip to the kind of what I'd call the new information. So the general levy history, again, this is what you saw at your previous work session at 4.9%, with the levy history going back to 2016. So the general levy and the debt service levy, which was up from a previous slide, ends up being kind of the total amount that you'd be requesting from the City of Carver taxpayers to fund the city's operation for the general fund, which is a 4% increase over 2020. Here's some additional information. Councilmember McKnight had asked for how our total levy increase relates to our population history. And so I think it does provide some additional context. As the city continues to grow, you're going to see a levy increase just because I think the mayor's use this. By the way, if anyone hasn't listened, there's a podcast that the League of Minnesota Cities put out that the mayor participated in. She stole one of my analogies about more mouths to feed, so Imitation is the greatest form of flattery.
I probably gave you credit, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
He gave me kudos. But anyway, I was, really, we typically don't do population forecasts year to year, but based on the number of new building permits, we really, went up by close to 500 people, and I think you can probably expect something similar for 2021. So, we've been kind of puttering a little bit in the 4,000, but we're going to go from 5,000 to 6,000 pretty quickly here. So I think it puts a little bit more of a spotlight on some of the bigger infrastructure projects the council's considering. Water treatment plant, Jonathan Carver Parkway, street maintenance planning. That the fun part is kind of seeing the rooftops and welcoming the new neighbors. Kind of the nitty gritty is talking about plow trucks and funding infrastructure, etc. So the assessment summary, something that we cover, the average market value change for the city is just over 4%. So that means if your house was valued at 300,000, right now we're expecting that to go up to about 312,000. The average value home is 330,000 in the city. So kind of down to the tax rate, something that we wanted to discuss with the council tonight. So we'll take our certified levy, which you essentially adopt as your preliminary levy and then finalize at your December meeting. And that number is divided from the total market value of the city that comes up with our tax rate. And so last year, the city's tax rate, was about 49.45%. We end up getting revised tax information from the county in the form of an Excel spreadsheet, so we can include our preliminary tax for 2021, input the tax capacity along with some other factors that go into preparing that, and it's a really great tool. We can come up with an estimated tax rate, which in turn allows us to come up with an estimated tax. And so based on the draft, so the 4% levy increase, the tax rate would go from about 49.5% to 44.25%. And you can see the difference between that impact on a $300,000 home. And so here is just a representation of that over time since 2013. And then kind of the methodology or the calculation, if you will, on that. So you can see a $300,000 home. There's a homestead exclusion that's applied. So that gets you to a tax capacity, the $2,898 multiplied by the city tax rate, gets you the city of Carver property taxes. Now, one of the things that we'll explain further during the truth and taxation is for each one of the taxing entities on someone's truth and taxation, the same calculation is made. So think of this for the city, then the county has one, the school district, metropolitan council, that all makes up. So it's like having the Excel center point, your cable bill all on one. So sometimes that can be a little bit difficult where if the city is having, is going to decrease city taxes, but a referendum just passed in the school district, that's going to go up. Human nature, folks are going to look at that bottom line. And so we have some work to do to educate people and point out some of those differences within the greater context of the tax statement. So here you can see that difference down to $1,283. Now, what we also do is we try to show that calculation if your home went up by the average value, so that 4.9%. And so, that 4.2%. So you can see what that does. It increased a $300,000 home in 2019. If it went up the average market rate, it would be valued at $312,000. Again, the homestead exclusion is applied. And so their taxes, or city taxes, would be just under $1,350. And so if I had that $300,000 home in 2020, and my home went up by that average rate of about 4.25%, I'd realize about a $89 decrease to my city tax. And so one of the things that we've been doing for the last several years is looking at that like a utility bill. So if you separated out that cost of $1,283, divided into 12 months, you'd average about $107 a month. And then by percentage, we break out essentially what that costs. So $10 for fire protection, $31 for our debt service, so street improvements, city hall, etc., which is down about $12 from 2019. So kind of rounding this out and kind of teeing up the conversation for the council. So kind of the last items in of most significance is the new snowplow truck, which we are showing as a transfer from the special capital fund based on the closing of the antenna easement or tower easement with American Tower. And then the not included items, public services capital equipment, additional street maintenance funding, a full-time position in public services, and then fire department capital equipment, which would relate to the self-contained breathing apparatus, the tank and the mask. Callie and I have had a couple of conversations. I think we're looking at about 2025 for that, for about $180,000. And we'll have more information to share with the council as that gets closer. But a couple of the items there. And so one of the...
A quick question. You said you and Callie had talked about that in 2025. Is that a year or is that a dollar amount? About
both. So and Chief, you can kind of jump in here if I'm missing anything, but the department will apply for grants during that time. One of the things that occurred, so the last time we purchased these was in 2010, and there was a little bit of consternation because there just hadn't been a fund built up to make that purchase, and so it added some pressure to the council, the fire department, etc. And so, going through that experience at the time, we kind of pledged that we weren't going to put ourselves in that position again. And so, yes, this would be a purchase in 2025, and hopefully a combination of grants and, in essence, the savings account for the fire department can get us to make that purchase without a lot of financial stress. Did I hit all the salient points there, Callie?
Yeah, I believe so.
Thank you.
So this slide is kind of designed to kind of tee up some council conversation if you so choose. So this kind of gives you kind of a laddering effect of what happens should you choose a different path from what's in the current draft of the budget, that 4% increase. So all the way from lowering it to a 0% increase in what you'd have to reduce from the budget, all the way to kind of adding the last items out that we had in that previous slide and the corresponding tax impact. And so I'm not recommending any of them. A current draft provides kind of a real term view, but I think this is where the kind of the staff hands off this issue to the council is more from a policy perspective. Next year, we're going to be taking on the Jonathan Carver Parkway debt. And so in many circumstances or points of view, we're going to be kind of faced with the kind of continuing kind of budget constraints that we have this year under the pandemic. And so I wanted to at least tee this up for a conversation for the council. That's essentially the presentation that we have for you tonight. Again, we're looking to get that feedback on the preliminary levy to put you in a position where you feel comfortable with adopting that preliminary levy or the budget for the budget at your next meeting. If you need more time, we have space provided to schedule a special work session on the 14th. Should you want to talk about it tonight and have us do some additional research and present some new information on the 14th as well. So with that, I'll open it up or hand it back to the mayor for a discussion from the council.
Great, thank you, Brent. So there are two things that I would like to have the council consider. So keeping in mind that our next meeting, next planned scheduled meeting, we are going to be setting the ceiling height for the budget. Looking at the fire department capital equipment fund, Brent, are we working from zero that we have saved right now for those SCBAs? Callie?
No, I don't have the number in front of me.
It's about $80,000.
Yeah, that's what I was going.
That we have saved, okay. You know, I remember, boy, I thought it was, is it Christy and Lori? And Lori, if you could turn on your video, that would be helpful. Who are on the fire board, you guys talking about mentioning that we were gonna start saving for that, and that would be, that made all the members of the fire board excited and happy that we were, gonna tackle that really, really significant purchase in a more responsible way. In the same way, I also think that we should consider adding back in the street maintenance funding of $35,000. Earlier this year, when we discussed not going ahead with franchise fees, we realized that that money was gonna have to come from somewhere, and we're making some really good headway in those projects this year and next. But we have a fair amount of projects to look forward to, if you will. I mean, the majority of the streets, I think it's safe to say, the older streets in Carver are gonna need to be going through the same kind of process that we're doing on Kirchie and Dietrich and in the Bluffs this year, in the upcoming years. And I would like to have, that's not a project that I have an appetite at all to do any bonding for the simple mill and overlay projects. So I would like to have some money that we're starting to save for that and to put away for those projects so that we can continue to keep chipping away at that. So those are my thoughts. Anyone else have any feedback?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Christy.
Mayor Johnson?
Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, there's a little delay too, so I can't, thanks. So what is presented here, to me, looks fantastic, where we're at. And with the pandemic that is going on, and this is not the political part of it, but this is just sort of reality of the world. People have some uncertainty in their job positions. They have some uncertainty in life. I am not looking to add more dollars. I'm not looking to raise the taxes, our city taxes, any higher than they are, as shown right here that have been presented. I'm really comfortable with where it's at. I think staff has done a really good job, and I just feel like I want to be very conservative this year on what we are asking from people. I think we are doing a great job with getting some of that street maintenance started that we talked about. I'm just concerned about bringing it any higher. I mean, I think this year too, like people are watching every penny, and I think people are there's many people who might be suffering that we're not aware of. And as we go farther into the fall and into the next year, who knows what the job markets and the world is going to look like. So it's my preference to not to tax at any higher rate than we're being shown as the suggested amount here.
So Christy, just my thoughts on that, and I think everybody who's on this Zoom meeting knows that if anybody is sympathetic to those who have been experienced by COVID effects one way or the other, or the really, really, really rough job market, it is yours truly. I think that I am taking more of a long game look at this and really trying to think of, what can we do now? And if we include both of those items, that'll get us up to the draft levy option, where our estimated tax rate is 45.22%. That's 1% higher than we are, and residents will still recognize a decrease in their taxes. So because the numbers come out as they are, and because we have growth that we have been really lucky to have experienced, that's the background, and that's why I'm comfortable adding these back in. And again, like taking a look at that long game, it sets us and future councils up better, especially for that really sizable, both of those elements, both of those items, the SCBA purchase and the future mill and overlay work that needs to be done on our streets is going to be significant. And honestly, these numbers are, especially for the road work, really small.
Yeah, and I hear you with, as it spreads out, that seems very small, but I mean, every dollar that gets charged from whatever in your life adds up to the big dollar amount. It may seem it's only this much here, but every entity that affects our entire worlds, they all add up to something. So to me, am very proud to look at this and say we've had our numbers look better, and the one, Brent, where it shows the cities in the county watching us fall down that line where we're at a much higher space on that ladder, I think very important. Thank you. I just think it's very important, especially at this point in the world. I think trying to be as conservative with our residents' funds as possible is the route that I feel comfortable with. And I understand some of those other needs that are going to be coming. We are getting a good jump on some of our maintenance issues already. The SCBA's, I know that Kelly has been working on those plans, and it sounds like there is money in there now, but realizing that there's always a chance to do more as it comes up. But I just, for this year of 2021, I really feel conservancy on what residents as a whole are going to have coming out of their pocket is really important.
All right, Joy, you started, or Joy and then Glenn.
Sure. So just to clarify, Brent, I'm going to try to find the slide. Slide 16 shows that we're contributing $85K to street maintenance. So that's higher than what we would normally put in, correct? On an annual basis.
I think last year was right around 70.
Okay, so it is somewhat higher. I certainly sympathize with Mayor Johnson about the coming bubble of maintenance that we are going to have over the next several years. And I do want to see us contribute more, so I'm glad that number is a bit higher. But again, I struggle with this is a really uncertain year, and I know we have a lot more ahead of us next year. So I'm pleased that we're contributing more here. I'm also pleased that we do have money for the fire department needs as well. I guess, you know, my vote is to stay as proposed. I like this plan, just as we are, just knowing that there's a lot more coming next year, and just the uncertainty right now and over the immediate term for our residents. It's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Glenn?
I go back to the assessment summary, and I was really pleased to see the numbers of residential that has bumped up our totals of the assessment, which I call it spreading the pain, for lack of a better phrase. Realistically, when I look at the 2020 versus the 2021, I want to remind the council that this is a do not exceed. So this would be a ceiling. We could always take things out of the budget. We have time to do that. But currently, knowing that that the fire department is going to need the SCBA's, and we are going to have a substantial amount of road construction next year, and just even the street maintenance. Those 2 items, I will concur with the mayor that I don't have a problem keeping those 2 in for the immediate time frame for the do not exceed budget, because we can always take them out in October, November, before we vote on the final project. But if we take them out now, there's no way we can say, oops, well, we really should have put some money aside for those 2, because those are going to be big hits in the years to come. So I would rather see what are those $2 amounts? The 25 and the 35,000 kept in for the near future, so that way it's the do not exceed dollar amount. So that way we can still have conversations about them instead of taking them out now and taking them absolutely out of the equation as of right now. Those are my thoughts. Because when I look at it realistically, even if we keep them in, our taxes will be still lower for next year than what they are for this year.
Thank you, Glenn.
If that makes sense to you.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, and I want to be clear, I have, I'm absolutely open to, negotiate, but I think it would do us a service to have it in for that first draft budget so that we have that in for the not to exceed number. Again, taxes will still go down to the residents of Carver, and it sets us up better for the long term. We know what's coming down the pike. We know that we have, the Jonathan Carver Parkway project is coming, and that's going to be fairly significant in our 2022 budget and probably allow us a lot less wiggle room in terms of setting ourselves up for the long term for some of these bigger projects that we're talking about tonight. So, again, Council, I really want to stress, I'm advocating to have those two line items put in for the not to exceed number so that we can continue discussing this throughout the fall. And that so that we can kind of see, Christy, probably to your point, a little bit to see how the COVID situation goes, how the economic situation goes, and best case scenario, set us up very well for the SCBA replacements, for the mill and overlay work that needs to be done in all of the older streets throughout the city. So, Lori, I don't think you've had a chance to weigh in yet. Why don't you go ahead?
No, thank you, Mayor Johnson. And just to confirm, those are kind of two areas or categories that your proposal, or you would like to see put back in was the, thank you, the fire department capital equipment and the
additional street maintenance funding.
Okay, so 2 and 4. I also support that. There are so many unknowns this year, but the one thing we know for sure is we need to keep our fire department equipped with updated equipment. So just on that tone, we're going to need to always support them and keep them equipped. So for that reason. And then with the street maintenance, I like that term, long game, but really just being good stewards of the infrastructure that we have, taking care of what we have. And the one thing we do know is these roads are going to continue to deteriorate and need some type of replacement. So for that reason, I would like to keep or include those in the 2021. That's my only comments.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Any other thoughts, comments?
I guess, can I ask a question about the SCBA total? Because I don't have it in my notes from the fire board meetings. Is the plan to put $25K a year, 2021, 22, 23, 24, and 25 to meet the spend requirement in 2025?
You'd have to recalibrate that, Joy. It'd be,
okay.
But you're on the methodology is correct. I don't,
okay.
The dollar amount we'd have to figure out.
Okay, but you're kind of saying, let's put, for 5 years, let's put a fifth of that each year so that we have the total ready. Got
correct.
It. Okay. Okay.
Based on what I hear from the council, I guess what I would probably do is prepare a resolution at the 4% and a resolution at the 6%, and then allow the council to or not allow, but the council could discuss and then, vote on whichever one, unless there was a third option that you wanted to have presented. You obviously could put any number in it, but we prepare to.
Brent, I have a question. For the SCBAs for the fire department, is the dollar amount, I know you said you don't have the exact, but is the dollar amount of, I don't remember the slide, 25,000? Is that that a stagnant number that every year we had 25, 25, 25 to get us to the right point?
Yeah, so if we, so 180,000 divided by 5 is 36,000. So we'd be putting 25 away and probably using, I would say then 11,000 of that 80,000 for year one. Then if you follow that track, then we'd be, for the 2022 budget, we'd be looking to allocate 36,000, and then all the way up to 2025, which would be then the last kind of installment.
Callie, I know you're on here. If you're able to answer these questions, do we apply for grants for this as well, or have we received anything in the past, or are there any other funding available?
We
can look at this.
The last time we replaced them in 2010, we started applying for grants around 2007. Each year we applied for it and we were denied each year. Once again, we will start probably the following year, and we will apply up until we need to purchase them in 2025.
Okay, so the ones you did a complete overhaul in 2010 and got all brand new ones that year?
Yeah, this is something where you need to replace them all at once, because all the bottles and all the packs will be expired, so we'll have to replace them all in 2025. It's not where you could replace a couple a year, because the models change, and you're going to want training standpoint, and from a usage standpoint, you're going to want everything to be the same.
Okay, and is there a reason that 2025 is the magic number?
Because they're only good for 15 years.
Okay, and then they have to go out of service, but legally, I guess?
Yeah, OSHA requires them to be taken out of service.
Okay. Okay.
Callie, would you mind sharing with the council you have I think an interesting grant story through a partnership, right? That there was a successful grant and you're working with that agency.
Yeah, we received a grant, matching grant from the DNR for a purchase of a radio. So as the city will have to put forth $5,000, the DNR is matching another $5,000. So we'll be able to actually replace 2 to possibly 3 of those radios that we also need.
I guess that Kelly, I was referring to, there was another department that successfully applied for the SCBA's, and you're working with them to try to mirror our grant language.
Oh, that actually wasn't for SCBA's. It was actually for the radios. But yeah, Clone right down the road received a successful grant from FEMA to replace all the radios. So we are working to get their language and mirror it into ours.
Okay, so when you apply for grants, do you have to apply them in order to get them all at once? So would you be applying for year 2025, or do you apply and then they just give you a chunk of money and then the city has to come up with the matching funds whatever year you get it in?
Yeah, that would be the case, and most of the time it's 10%. And that's kind of why we have that fund set up, to kind of, if we were to get a grant in year 2024 per se, we would have the funds available to.
Right, I mean, that would be 18,000. So we could, I mean, we'll apply for that, or we'll support applying for those FEMA funds every year, and if we get it early, then we'll be able to, with our existing fund balance, pay for our grant match.
Okay, so for me, I can get on board with adding into our maximum levy amount that we would consider to add the fire department in. I think we've already raised the amounts for streets. Again, I'm feeling very, very conservative this year because people's lives are so up in the air that just keep adding more and more doesn't appeal to me. So if the rest of the council agrees, at least on that part, that we should go back with having the fire department dollar amount entered in, I can get on board with that.
So I would still like to see the street amount added in, $15,000 added to the street maintenance fund from 2020 to 2021. Though that doesn't buy you a lot, as we've seen, because we've gone through these numbers recently when we're approving the mill and overlay projects and the full depth reconstruction projects for the streets that we're working on this year. So I still continue to advocate to add both of those in. So Brent,
I have a question for Brent, Mayor Johnson.
go ahead.
Brent, I know that one of our bids or quotes that we got in for reconstruction spot up in the Bluffs, I believe, came in much lower than we had anticipated. So can you explain that a little bit, and then maybe the excess funding that we might have left over, if there is some?
Correct. So that's a agenda item for tonight that Aaron Schmidt's going to be presenting that. So I'll go back to the street maintenance slide. So this slide is kind of reflective of what I say is our new reality, where the last time you saw this table, we had Ramsey at 111,000, and so with Ramsey coming in at 50, with project costs at 50,000, you're essentially able to fund Kirchy High, Carver Bluffs, Carver Creek, and Ramsey for that $200,000 in special capital fund transfer. The last time you looked at this, we showed a street maintenance fund balance of, it was under $5,000. So you're picking up, $60,000 from the last time you looked at this table as it relates to future street maintenance. So I think that's a significant change from the last time we looked at it, when we were anticipating doing Ramsey in 2021 for $60,000 more than we're going to be doing it for in 2020.
Okay, thank you. So that just reiterates where I stand on it, but thank you.
Okay, and just, if you look at it, $291,000, I don't know that we're mill and overlaying more than, a half a mile of streets in Carver. And just to think about how much more we have left, I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from and what's rattling around in the back of my brain. So, Brent, it sounds like we're all at the same place in terms of it being in favor of making sure that the fire department's $25,000 gets back in there. Can I see council members thumbs up, thumbs down, or head? Lori, Glenn, okay. But I think that the area where we're still debating, can I do the same straw poll for the $35,000 for the street improvement?
It's still a do not exceed number.
Yep. Joy? Yeah. Do you have a vote, Joy?
I'm okay with the do not exceed for now, but I guess the ask I would have in the interim before we finalize it is, I don't know how much more detail we can get about potential street maintenance costs and getting more specific about specific street names and dollars. I know we've looked at a couple of different tables, but maybe if we can have some more data so that looks a little bit more concrete in my mind for 2021, if we're going to include additional monies, to kind of have an eye for what it might include now that we've moved Ramsey into 2020.
All right, Councilmember Nick, can you say that Representative Nash was trying to contact me about meeting next, so I missed the first part of your comment.
So my comment is I'm okay with including the additional street maintenance in the not to exceed for now, but I guess the homework before the additional data I'd like to see before we finalize this number is that maybe if we can have another table of what next projects we can envision for 2021 or even 2022, street names, potential dollars, so that I could see a little bit more concretely now that we've moved Ramsey into 2020. right? So we've moved some things off that table. What would be left for 2021 so I can kind of see where those dollars might be going? That would help me.
And I would say typically we would be able to do that. One of the things that we're kind of funding that's kind of built into the existing engineering budget is doing a pavement management plan.
Okay.
And I think just for the sake of kind of equity and identifying priorities, I'd like to kind of see us as an organization get away from kind of I would say like what we have done recently is kind of Chad and Paul going out and identifying some priorities. But I think we probably owe it to the residents to have a more formal review of all the streets to make sure that it's not just the ones that we're traveling down, or the routes that some of us may or may not take to work, that kind of thing. So that was an inside joke for some folks. So we won't really have that kind of information that would probably be useful without that. So I don't think we're going to be able to provide you with really useful data.
Okay. What do you think we would have a more detailed maintenance plan?
I would say by a year. So in my mind, with the Jonathan Carver Parkway project, including the 6th Street work to resurface, I'm not envisioning that the city, based on the budget and practicality, would do any significant surfacing work in 2021 beyond the 6th Street work. But and Dan and Chad could maybe chime in. My hope would be that we could have a pavement management plan done in time to inform the 2022 budget process, so that the council could review, ask questions, critically assess the pavement management plan to the point where that number is kind of baked in already to the 2022 budget, that you already know what that number is, you've debated it. And really what that kind of does is eliminate the need to kind of get into the nitty gritty on streets. It's more of a budget conversation than it is which street to do conversation in the budget. And that's what we're looking to kind of clean up and make a little bit more efficient with you. But Dan or Chad, any comments on what that pavement management plan schedule or process, how long that would take and what that looks like?
No, what you offer is very reasonable. I mean, without question, we could have it in line for the next budget cycle. It's generally a couple-month process, but obviously the duration is really going to be contingent on a review, comment, feedback, a modification, because you're really setting your priorities and setting up your costs for next 5+ years. So it's with the review cycles themselves, it's a multiple month process typically.
And what's really unique about this upcoming process, it's going to, I think, really, you wouldn't typically find this, but we're going to create this pavement management plan, which is going to dovetail right into Dan and his team are working on a presentation for the council on the city receiving municipal state aid for streets. And so we're expecting to receive that state aid to the tune of first estimating anywhere between $250,000 and $300,000 for street maintenance a year, which for example could really help on the 4th Street resurfacing project. I'm guessing that'll be a priority of the council. It's a collector, it's in need of repair, but you're going to be able to take those two things, and one of the processes of the pavement management plan is Chad or Paul Schultz or someone from their team will literally drive every mile streets, will grade it based on a scale of how that road is holding up, create priorities, costs, and so it's a really effective process for planning and maintaining the city's street system. We just don't have it in place right now, but it'll be comprehensive and it'll align nicely with the city entering into the state aid program for street maintenance, being a city over 5,000.
Brent, can you just clarify though, as nice as that state aid money will go, that has to be on specific probably larger, more well-traveled streets like 4th Street. It's not gonna be able to be put towards mill and overlay work in River Oaks or in the Bluffs.
Correct. The council will adopt a program with, I think, a corresponding map, if I'm correct, Dan. And then, but yes, it'd be, I would think of streets like 4th Street, 6th Street, probably Mount Hope Road, Carver Bluffs Parkway. If the city takes over the turn back from Carver County, so it'd be County Road 40 would likely be in that program. Those are typically the types of streets that you'd find in a state aid program. Am I hitting all the high notes on that, Dan?
Yep, it has to start and stop at another state aid route. So they put a little bit of strategy into trying to maximize your funding. But yes, that generally means it's not going to be a subdivision that terminates on another subdivision street.
When will we be eligible for that again?
So we'll become eligible next year. We'll likely receive funding beginning in budget year 2022. If I could, council, if we could put a pin in this and finish this up at the end of the regular council meeting, so we can give our team enough time to transition over to the regular meeting. I think there's some more work we can do here, and I have some updates to share with the council, but I don't want to stretch us for time and give everyone a chance to use the facilities if they need to.
That is just what I was going to suggest, Brent. Would you like to do your city manager's report, or would you like to save that for the?
I'll just save that for the regular meeting.
Okay. Any council requests? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Henry.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All right. Mr. Mayor, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Henry.
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Hi, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayre.
Hi, Lori Sayre.
Councilmember McKnight.
Hi, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. All right. Meeting is adjourned. We'll see y'all in a few minutes.